Welcome to the Splash City Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hartman, and if you've been paying attention, you know exactly what time it is. It is a national championship game, Monday night, April 6th. We are recording Sunday, April 5th. We'll recap everything from the Final Four, women's Final Four, and we'll break down the Michigan UConn battle Monday night for the national championship. This weekend in Indianapolis, a little bit of a dud, to be honest. Couldn't really get a lot of fireworks. The Elite Eight delivered with the UConn Duke ending, but Illinois UConn was kind of a slog, and Arizona Michigan was billed as the game of the year, and it did not deliver unless you were maize and blue. So, does the title game have that factor? Will we see fireworks? Will we see an epic game and a back and forth battle between Dan Hurley and Dusty May's squads? Or will we see another blowout? Michigan rolls to dominance in the 2026 national title? We'll talk about that and more right now. All right, so first I want to talk about the UConn-Illinois game. This was a slog from the get-go. Kind of expected a little bit different flow, knowing that Illinois came into the game with one of the country's best offenses. They're very big. They find mismatches. They hunt those. They get their switch, and then they attack. They play a lot of isolation basketball. The problem for Illinois in this game was Illinois was able to punish teams who switched on them, but they weren't able to punish UConn. UConn did a great job of battling on switches, and then they stayed home and forced Illinois into tough shots. A lot of times Illinois likes to force a double team, swing the ball, rotate, but UConn up to the task, inside and out, and Illinois just never really got it going. On the other side of the coin, Illinois' Achilles heel all year had been their defense until the tournament, until March, when they really turned around their defense. But in this game, I think what you saw is that it is hard to chase UConn around screen after screen, solo ball, Braylon Mullins, Alex Caravan, constantly for 40 minutes without giving up something. And Illinois didn't have quite the quickness to stay with those players. And what ended up happening is Terrace Reed would post up down low. He'd get real deep after the ball swung a couple times. No help there because you're chasing. You got to stay home on shooters. And UConn was able to do just enough at the end. Now, Illinois got it to within 4 in the last minute, but then Braylon Mullins hits a big-time three to go up 7. Keaton Wagler comes down and responds with a 3, but there was only about 50 seconds left, and UConn salts this one away and wins. So we got to talk about UConn as the dynasty in the last 30 years. They've got all 5 national championships since 1999. The next closest team has 3. And Dan Hurley, as polarizing as he may be, might be the best coach in the sport right now. Just ask him; he'll tell you. And as you know, I will admit I don't love the antics. I don't love the personality, but the results speak for themselves. 3 championship games in the last 4 years, could be 3 titles in 4 years. Very impressive stuff. Gets a lot of his offensive system from Europe, and you can see it. Constant movement. It's very fun to watch their offense play. UConn is just a juggernaut. They are, they kind of self-proclaim home of college basketball with the men and the women on that side. In the other game, we have Michigan, Arizona, billed as kind of the game, the top 2 teams basically all year. Size, strength, interior defense, interior rim protection, going up against each other. What was going to be the difference? I thought Yaxel Lendeborg was the difference. But Yaxel goes down, only played, I think, 14 minutes in this game, and Michigan was still able to dominate. Lendeborg got in foul trouble immediately, and Michigan was still able to dominate. I think two reasons I see here. Experience. We've kind of talked about this a lot this season. A lot of these teams are older. You get the transfer portal. You got guys that are graduate students playing for 5-6 years in college. Big difference there. I also think Michigan's activity, they just seemed to have more juice. They were quicker to lose balls. They were quicker to rebounds. They had better hands. They were getting deflections. And Cole Pete and Braden Burries, it's not all on them. Jaden Bradley got in foul trouble. That really hurt Arizona. But overall, it just seemed like Michigan overwhelmed a team who hadn't been overwhelmed. Largest halftime deficit all year was 7 points. That was the Purdue game. Michigan's up 12 at halftime. By far the worst defeat of the year for Arizona. Never really that close. And Michigan looks as unbeatable as someone can be in basketball, knowing that any game, anything can happen. Um, Michigan's 3-point shooting was a big difference. I think Arizona, all year they kind of lived and died by their inside presence. They were bigger than everyone. They were more physical. They were longer. They could get to the basket. They could get to the paint on anyone and score. And in this game, they found somebody who could match them inside, and they don't have the other things. They have been notorious all year for being one of the teams that shoots the least amount of three pointers, makes the least amount of three pointers. And when you looked at the box score, I'm pretty sure I read this right. Michigan made 6 more threes than Arizona. 6 times 3, my public school math tells me is 18. The margin of victory is 18. And so when you have two teams that, you have a team like Michigan who can match you inside, negate your strength, and you have nothing else really, you're not gonna beat them. And so Michigan to me has this complete package. They have length on the inside. They have toughness and physicality. They have bench scoring. They have some three-point shooting, not great, but enough. They have a guard who controls the game. Elliot Cadeau was really good at times, really bad at times, but he outplayed the point guards from Arizona. Bradley obviously getting in foul trouble, and then Braden Burry's having to dribble, bring the ball up more, got him out of sorts. Del Orzo didn't have a really really impactful game. Archenkov, he made some shots, but again, Michigan's guards, Burnett, Cadeau, McKinney, the freshman, very huge for Michigan in this game. So Michigan, UConn should be a really interesting game. My thought here is that what UConn did to teams, for instance, when they played Duke, you had Cam Boozer trying to guard Alex Caravan, chasing around screens. That is a mismatch for UConn. Against Illinois, you had guys like Mirkovic and Stojakovic and Keaton Wagler trying to chase guys all over the place around screens. And they aren't, most of those guys, Wagler's very good, but he's a freshman. But the foot speed is different there. Michigan has more foot speed. Michigan can chase guys around. They played another team who does some of this, Fletcher Lawyer for Purdue, and Michigan dominated Purdue in that game. So I think Michigan also guarding Terrace Reed, a lot of times what will happen is Michigan switches a lot, right? On the perimeter. That's like one of their hallmarks of their defense. So they're switching. And again, UConn is hoping that they get Terrace Reed on a mismatch. But if you go, for instance, if you switch and you're switching perimeter and you're switching bigs, you're going to switch Mara with Morez Johnson. That isn't much easier. Or with the Yaxel Lendeborg, which isn't much better. So Michigan's flexibility in what they do defensively, I think is going to present unique challenges to UConn. Again, not going to say that UConn cannot win. They have proven enough. They have shown enough in this season. But you look at a couple of the games they lost, right? They got smoked by St. John's twice. What is St. John's really good at? Pressure and physicality down low. And Michigan won't press you full court a lot, but their guards are really good and crafty. Cadeau had 4 steals the other night. Burnett, older player, good defender. McKinney, physical, point of the attack, strong on the ball. And then they just have so much length. They have so much toughness inside. I have a hard time believing that UConn can do the things against Michigan that got them here. Um, so I was not always the biggest believer in Illinois. I think that was a little bit smoke and mirrors matchups, right? They got past Houston and then they had to play Iowa to get to the Final Four. Um, Michigan is on another level as they showed Saturday night. I think the couple keys for me are going to be, can Solo Ball and Braylon Mullins make shots? If those two are, say, 6 for 13 from 3, that's going to be huge for UConn. And the other side of it is the rebounding battle. Arizona very good on the glass all year long, and Michigan punished them. Michigan was just tougher, more physical, faster to the basketball. Now, that's one thing you're not going to see much out of um, UConn, right? They're not going to get punked very often, but they did this year once against St. John's. And so, that's they had 11 offensive rebounds. Arizona ended up with 18 offensive rebounds, but that game was so far out of hand so early. Um, 40 total rebounds for Michigan and 44 for Arizona. They didn't make up the difference considering they missed 34 shots. Arizona's a good offensive rebounding team too, but Michigan just dominated that. So, turnovers are always going to be a thing in big games like this. But the 3-point shot, super important. Michigan was 12 for 27, well above their season average, but let's say they go 9 for 27, 33%, and you're still feeling like, you run away with that game against Arizona. So, um, that'll be the big thing for UConn, I think. Can Mullins and even Karaban didn't have a great game against Illinois, and UConn was able to, I wouldn't say comfortably win that game, but they did win that game, down the stretch by 9. So Karaban was only had 9 points. He was 1 for 7 from 3. Demery was 1 for 6 from 3. So you got Mullins had 4 for 7 and Solo Ball 3 for 7. If you can get one more guy to knock down some shots, Jaden Ross perhaps, he was 2 for 2 against Illinois. But Karaban, kind of an uncharacteristically quiet game for Karaban. I expect him to show up big time in this one. Him and Lendeborg, if they're matched up on each other, should be really interesting. I could see Michigan putting maybe Merez Johnson then on Demery as kind of that helper, so that he doesn't have to chase Caravan around. Lendeborg can do that. But that'll be some really interesting coaching, I think, in that game, just to kind of see what style wins out here. I just don't know that Michigan can play any style, and they've shown that. And so to me, that's just really hard to beat them. They're going to have an off game. Even Connecticut, if they play an A game and they play really well, Michigan's going to have to play like a B minus, I think, for UConn to beat them. I think that's how good Michigan is. And I'm having a hard time seeing it. But again, Connecticut's 6-0 all time in national championship games. So you never know. They're tough to beat for sure. Love the way they play. Again, not the biggest Dan Hurley fan, but definitely got to respect what he's doing and the team he puts on the court. They are clicking at the right moments. UConn, by the way, had lost to Arizona, St. John's twice, Creighton, and Marquette. So none of those games are like, Arizona obviously very good, and that was early in the year. So when I look at Michigan, man, I don't. Wisconsin had a very like crazy amount of threes. Duke got him by 5, and Purdue got him in the Big Ten tournament. Those are some quality teams with big time veteran players. Wisconsin's backcourt was elite. Duke's in that game. Duke played the game that they needed to play to win. That was probably as good as Duke can play. If they would have played that way against UConn, they probably are in the Final Four, but here we are. So my prediction, I'm going Michigan 84, UConn 72. I think the line was 7.5. I think the Vegas books are probably begging people to take UConn here because people just don't, because people believe in UConn. They seem like they kind of have a little destiny going on. They just have this aura about them, right? But Michigan's met most of the challenges this year, and I just don't really see a lot of weaknesses with that team. Now, Lendeborg is supposed to play. Solo Ball also notified today that he had a foot sprain. He was in a boot. No Solo Ball, honestly, might be a bigger deal than no Lendeborg for Michigan, even though Lendeborg's Big Ten Player of the Year, first team All American. Michigan kind of proved He got 14 minutes the other night, and they just smacked the second best team in the country all year. So I got Michigan. I'm calling it 84-72. Let's move over to the women's side and talk briefly about the Final Four there. We had all 4 1 seeds. One thing I've always struggled with the women's tournament is just the frequency at which the top seeds get through. It's very top heavy. Used to be even more so, but now I think we're still in that era where the top 4 to 5 teams are just so far above everybody else. But we get fireworks at the end of the South Carolina UConn game. UConn's undefeated record out the window. South Carolina punks them, beats them by 14. Geno not happy, and he let Don Staley, South Carolina's head coach, know about it. Thought this was a really low class move from someone who's been around a lot and won a lot of games, but also lost some big games. Geno Auriemma just looked like he short circuited. I don't really get it. He said that was about a handshake before the game, but even if that's the case, you take that offline, you do it behind closed doors. What you come across as is a sore loser. Your team hadn't lost all year and you get beat in the Final Four and you're mad and you're big mad at Don Staley and um, there's no real reason to do that there. He made himself look really silly. He did apologize for it today on Sunday. He apologized for his actions, but damage already done. Stories about you, stories not about South Carolina or UCLA. Everybody's talking about this. So, really, just kind of sad for a man his age who's coached as long as he has when you're supposed to be, you know, instilling values and talking about, how to play the game and how to respect the game and your opponents. So, just disappointed in that. But on the other side of it, UCLA beats Texas. UCLA out of the Big Ten gets the national championship today, comfortably beating by 28. I think it was the 5th largest victory in the national title game history for the women's side. Their first title for the Bruins in the NCAA. They did win a title before there was NCAA women's basketball championships. So the Bruins, I was always worried a little bit about their quickness, but man, Gabriela Jaquez looked awesome today. Lauren Betts, best player in college women's basketball. Maybe Azzi Fudd and Sarah Strong from UConn also in that conversation. But man, Lauren Betts, just the way she impacted the game offensively and defensively, felt like every time she got a good post up, she was scoring, and it felt like anytime somebody drove in, she was blocking it or changing the shot. So UCLA had a bunch of seniors. Again, experience, continuity matters in basketball, and it showed on the women's side big time. UConn or UCLA, sorry, just too tough all the way around. They kind of marched through the Big Ten, won the Big Ten regular season, won the Big Ten tournament comfortably, and they marched through this. Get a tough game against Texas. Texas quickness definitely bothered them, which is what I kind of noticed would bother them. But today against South Carolina, they had no problems. Just want to give a quick shout out though, since this is a Minnesota-based podcast, and I do try to, take the Minnesota angle on this for local listeners. We got Tessa Johnson from St. Michael Albertville playing for South Carolina women in the title game, and you have Will Schetter, Stewartville native, playing for Michigan in the national title game. So 2 Minnesotans playing for national titles over a 2-day span. So pretty exciting, pretty cool to follow that as well for the local fans here. So shout out to them. Big accomplishments. Tessa Johnson, no stranger here at this point with South Carolina being there last year as well, losing to UConn, and Paige Beckers, where we had 2 Minnesotans in the women's championship last year. But yeah, so that's the Minnesota angle. We'll take that. We'll take that. And then lastly, I wanted just to briefly mention that one of the things I wanted to talk about at the end of the show here was about Will Wade. I haven't brought this up yet, but for those who don't know, Will Wade, LSU gets in some trouble legally, FBI, things like that. It was part of the Arizona Sean Miller scandal as well. And so he goes to McNeese State. McNeese State's in the tournament, kind of raises his profile. He goes to NC State this year. Talked about bringing the Wolfpack back to national prominence, and he's all excited and he's all in on NC State. And immediately within that one season, he's gone. And guess where he's going back to? LSU. And so there's this kind of double standard about how we talk about players jumping versus what we talk about with coaches jumping like this. Now you don't see this very often in coaching where you leave for 1 year and you go back, let alone go back to the school you kind of started at or where you first got, some prominence. But just again, not a good look. Like, I don't know what Will Wade's attraction is with LSU. Maybe he feels like there's more resources there with football money or something, but they had a tournament team this year, and for whatever reason, he's just bolting and chasing that next thing. And I think it's, again, we're asking as fans, you want your student athletes in quotations, um, to stick around and buy into the program. And like coaches will tell that in their recruiting, like, come here, we're building something, we're doing, and then you're bolting within a year. And I think that's just kind of wild to me. Ben McCollum at Drake got offered his dream job at Iowa and brought some players with him. And so there's that side of it too, where you're like, yeah, you went for a year and you hopped, and I don't love that either. But dream job comes open. Most of us leave, right? If you start a new role today and you're 6 months in, you just get through all your training, for instance, and then you get your dream job offered, you would bolt too. So I get that a little bit. Um, Will Wade's record just doesn't pass the smell test for me, and I don't like the way that felt. But anyway, I just wanted to briefly talk about that, and not that it's huge news related to Minnesota, but I thought that was kind of bizarre story out of college basketball as well. But we're wrapping up the season. Monday night we'll have a champion in men's basketball. We'll talk about it. Will the Big Ten finally break their 26 season losing streak without a national title? Can Michigan bring it home, or will UConn cement themselves as the dynasty of this generation with their seventh title since 1999? We'll find out. So, thanks a lot for listening. If you want to give a follow, we are on Blue Sky, Facebook, and Instagram. Subscribe to YouTube, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, leave a review. Love to hear what you have to say. I got a really fun topic coming up here in a couple of weeks. We'll be talking a lot more Wolves basketball as well. They are taking on the Charlotte Hornets tonight. You should check in quick with that score. Little live look in. Charlotte up 116-96. No Ant, no Jaden. Wolves are limping to the finish line here in the playoffs. Naz Reid right now 3 of 14 from the field. Dante DiVincenzo 2 for 9. They're going to need to get right, and they're going to need Ant, and they're going to need Jaden if they want to do anything in the playoffs. But talk more Wolves later. Thanks a lot for listening. This has been the Splash City Basketball Podcast.
Bagging that bag